Good evening, students. Am I audible?
Being so yes, you can.
Okay. Uh, we have already met Rohan in the previous seminar on Advocate on Record exam, where Rohan Batra discussed about the possible uh, takeaways for preparation for AOR exam. In the same manner, today we will be discussing about company law tribunal, how company law tribunal work, what are the procedures, what type of cases advocates do file before company law tribunal. These are some of the blind areas many law students don't know about. Today we'll try to understand from Rohan how company law tribunals work, what is the jurisdiction, what is the scope, what is the possibilities, how you can find jobs in such type of companies where they have issues with regard to company matters. So I let's start the seminar. I hand over the stage to Rohan. Rohan, you can start the seminar. Thank you, Rohan. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Abhilash, for having me here. It's again a big pleasure for me to be here amongst all of you. Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
I was just saying that it's indeed a pleasure to be back again before you all to discuss another practice area which I'm usually involved in. So before I begin, I just thought let me just get a rough understanding of how many of us are aware of what is a company law tribunal, or what we normally call a National Company Law Tribunal or an NCLT. So anyone can just maybe give me a brief idea so that we can take that as a starting point. Or otherwise, I have an idea about understanding about how much we already know. Anyone wants to take a guess?
See, all the matters pertaining to company law, any issues arising out of company matters, or it has to be referred to the previously it was referred to the central government. Now it has been replaced as National Company Law Tribunal, wherein all the issues arising out of company matters and allied matters are related there or referred there for like it is. I would say it is more or less equal to income tax appellate tribunal where issues are resolved pertaining to income tax. Here it is company law.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Jogyala. Anyone else wants to contribute? Fair enough. So yes, Jogyala, I think you're right in parts. Just to give you all a background of what an NCLT is. So before NCLT was there was something known as a company law board. And even before that, if you had to go back in time, under the 1956 Companies Act, essentially it was the High Court. So High Court of different jurisdictions used to be the first body where all these matters arising out of your Companies Act used to go. And we'll deal with what kind of matters these are. But from a forum perspective, it was essentially the High Court. The High Court was, as I think Jogyala, you rightly pointed out, was replaced with central government by an amendment. But that never really took into play because they wanted to replace the amendment for central government with what is known as CLB. And I think sometime early 90s, 2000s is when CLB came into operation. It was supposed to be a specialized tribunal, just like your Customs Exchange Services Tax Tribunal, which is called CESTAT, which is only going to handle specialized company law related matters. When the 2013 Act came into being, the Act envisaged the creation of NCLT, or the National Company Law Tribunal. But it was not until 1st of June 2016 that NCLT was brought into existence. Before that, the matters were still going on before CLB, and some matters where High Court had jurisdiction, such as winding up, etc. In those cases, High Court had the jurisdiction. So from 1st June 2016, the central government brought about through a notification the creation of National Company Law Tribunal. Now, before describing what NCLT really does, let me discuss the organization structure or what NCLT is. So NCLT has currently 15 benches, which pretty much covers essentially all the states of India. There are some composite benches, and when I say composite benches, it means they are benches who handle jurisdictions from multifold areas. Out of those 15 benches, New Delhi is considered to be the principal bench. And when I say principal bench, I mean that's where the president, who's the administrative head for the NCLT body, he presides there. So there are 15 benches, out of which Delhi is considered to be a principal bench. Now in Delhi, the peculiar part today is that there are about 6 benches in total operating in Delhi itself, out of which one is, of course, the principal bench of the president. Now, I'm sure all of us would have read about the new updates about appointing of an acting president. So we had at NCLT Delhi a president earlier, but we were not able to find a formal appointment. So because of that, we've had in these last few months itself, as many as about 4 or 5 acting presidents who have taken over after the last official president had stepped down when his tenure was over. So the current, if it's of any help to anyone, the current president's name is Bhaskara Pandula Mohan, or basically BP Mohan. He was anointed as the acting president from 10th of June 2021. So this is essentially a broad primer of how the NCLT is spread out in an organization perspective. Now, what does this NCLT do? From the very name itself, it is called a company law tribunal. But that is not all that it does. So as per at least my own understanding, the company law currently handles 2 main kind of cases, if I can call them. The first are the cases of various kinds which comes from the Companies Act itself, 2013. The second big category or the second bucket of cases is your IBC matters or the insolvency bankruptcy matters. The third kind, if you want to create a third kind, so to speak, a third category, is that of contempt jurisdiction. So as per section 425 of the Companies Act itself, NCLT has the power to punish a person for a contempt of itself. So that essentially is the third kind of jurisdiction that is conferred upon NCLT. Now coming to the Companies Act. Now all of us have, of course, are familiar with some kind of cases which go to the tribunal. I think as Jogyala, one of my other colleagues here, he mentioned about some references from central government. Yes, that is one category of cases. But primarily, if we were to analyze, let's say, the regular board of an NCLT bench, they would be flooded with cases of 4 or 5 different kinds. And I'll just spell them out. The first is the operation and mismanagement cases. Now, there is a special jurisdiction under section 241 and 242 of the Companies Act, which deals with a complaint by a member who has a certain shareholding in the company. If he feels that his rights as a shareholder are being oppressed or he's being prejudiced, or if he feels that the affairs of the company are being mismanaged, then in those cases, he comes to the NCLT under section 241, 242 of the Act, the 2013 Act. Apart from that, there is another jurisdiction which is regarding mergers and acquisition, mergers and schemes. So normally, when you hear that so-and-so company of Reliance, let's say, hypothetically speaking, is merging with another company, or let's say there was some time back, I think about 4 or 5 years back, there was a news regarding Systema demerging its telecom business into another entity. So those kind of corporate actions require approval from the tribunal or the NCLT. And those fall under the mergers and schemes jurisdiction, which is there with NCLT under sections 230 to 232. So this is the second other category of case which comes before NCLT. What also comes are cases that you've often heard about when the company's name gets struck off. The ROC, for whatever reason, he finds that the company is not operational or not filing its returns on time. The ROC decides to strike off the name of the company from the record. And if you want to appeal that decision, that proceedings takes place before NCLT itself. So those fall under, I think, section 252 of the Companies Act 2013. So this would be the third category, where against the decision of the registrar to strike off the name of the company from the register of companies, you approach the NCLT. Another category is when you feel that my name as a shareholder of a company has not been entered, or it was already there, but it has been wrongly removed. What in corporate law parlance we call rectification. So whenever a shareholder seeks a rectification of the register of members, and this is a statutory register which the company is required to maintain, whenever that member wants to seek a rectification of that, we also approach NCLT. And just like this, there are many other provisions under the Companies Act which provides a recourse to either a shareholder or an aggrieved party or an applicant or an official of the company to approach NCLT. There is, of course, another power under, I think, section 210 to 213 for appointing specialized officers of the government to investigate the affairs of the company, which we've normally heard as SFIO, which is a Serious Fraud Investigation Office. So under these provisions, NCLT can direct either the central government to appoint their officers or direct the central government to appoint officers from the SFIO department to investigate the affairs of a company. So all of these different kinds of cases and proceedings come before NCLT. The second category, and I mentioned earlier, is IBC. Now, under IBC, there are all sorts of proceedings. But for today's sake, excuse me, we can simply consider the three kinds of corporate insolvency resolution processes which are contemplated under the IBC. The one is when an application is filed by a financial creditor. We've heard that term very often in the context of SBI moving a case against one of the big companies. We've also heard about something known as an application by an operational creditor who is somewhat different from a financial creditor. It is that entity which basically deals with goods and services and has rendered either services or goods to the other party and is now entitled to claim the payment for that. So if the payments are due, then the operational creditor steps in. And the third category of making an application under IBC to invoke its provisions is when the company itself decides that I'm not doing enough business, I have so many debts, it's impossible to service them, I might as well go through a resolution process. And that's the third category, when the company voluntarily initiates CIRP, as we call it, Corporate Insolvency Resolution Process. So these are essentially three kinds of initiations which can happen under the IBC: by a financial creditor under Section 7, by the operational creditor under Section 9, and by the company itself or the corporate debtor under Section 10. So all and everything to do with these proceedings or any other proceedings which are provided under the IBC, they fall before NCLT. Now, these are broadly the kinds of litigations or cases which you see and hear about. And the third category, of course, I mentioned was the contempt. Now, before I move on to another aspect of NCLT, I thought let's do a practical exercise where I take you through the cause list of NCLT and show you what are the actual matters and the nomenclatures which are used to list a matter before NCLT. And I think once we have an idea of what a cause list of NCLT looks like, all of us will become more familiar with what are these cases that I just spoke about. So with your permission, Abhilash, if it's possible to screen share.
Yes, you can share now. I have made you host. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as you all know, these days NCLT is operating through a virtual mode like every other court in India. So I thought I'd just give you a virtual demo itself of what a cause list looks like. So this is the screen visible to everyone?
Yes, yes.
So
Yes,
as you can all see, this is the NCLT New Delhi Principal Bench's cause list. It's an old cause list of 10th of June, but I picked it up because it had more variety from the perspective of the cases which NCLT handles. All of you can, I hope you can see this is NCLT Principal Bench Delhi, right? Now, the quorum is mentioned here. And as you will notice, this Mr. or Shri Bhaskara Pantula Mohan or BP Mohan is the Honorable Acting President as of now. He usually sits with a technical member. That is the typical composition of any NCLT bench. There will be one judicial member and there will be a technical member. At times, it's possible that a judicial member can also preside, and those proceedings are held to be valid as well. But that's, of course, in rare situations where the technical person is not available.
From
Now,
what
just to give-
Rohan, from what background do these technical people are appointed? Like, are they from?
They are mostly from the IAS background or from the government background.
Okay,
If-
okay, got it.
Or some department of ROC,
Okay.
some post of senior people. So that's how they come.
Sure. Okay.
Now, if you look at this cause list, now you will see that it has several rows and columns. If we start with the first one, on the heading itself, it says serial number, CP number, which is the company petition number. The purpose, the section is given under what provision it's been filed. Name of parties is mentioned, name of legal practitioner, and remarks. Now, if you look at the first one, it is named as IB 284 PB/2020-21. Purpose is new petition. And the section is section 7 of IBC. Now, I'll just pause here. The acronym or the initial IB suggests to any reader that this is an insolvency matter. So the moment you see what number is given, it's an IB number, it means it's an insolvency and bankruptcy petition which has been filed before the NCLT. The second marker is the word PB. Now, PB indicates that this is a principal bench matter, as opposed to where PB is not mentioned in other cause list. And so that anytime you come across a number like this, it will become very clear that this is an insolvency matter and this is before the principal bench, which means it has to be in Delhi itself. Now, in the section itself, it says it's a section 7. It means that this is a case of a financial creditor. Now, if I look at the names of parties, this is Vivek Khanna and others versus Space Towers Private Limited. Now, we've heard about, I gave the example of a financial creditor like SBI, but with the recent amendment in 2020 to the IBC, there is a new set of financial creditor, which is a home buyer. So this case of Vivek Khanna and others versus Space Towers Private Limited is that of a home buyer. Nevertheless, it's an application by a financial creditor. It's a new application, and this falls under the jurisdiction of NCLT. So this is just to give you an example that serial number 1 is an example of IBC matter. Now, similarly, if you look at serial number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up till 10 itself, and the next serial number 101, which means it's not a fresh matter. That's why the numbering changes. You will see that most of the board of NCLT is IBC matters. And we'll of course come to at the end of the session on how to work in these areas of IBC and NCLT, etc. That's a valid question and perhaps is more relevant than all of this that Abhilash read for everyone. Now you will see, interestingly, in 102, it refers to section 230, 232 and says CAA 44 PB 2021. Now this suggests that this is a company application itself. It is for further consideration and it is under section 230 to 232. Now this, if you all will recall, I mentioned in passing that there is a jurisdiction under NCLT where schemes of mergers and amalgamations can come up before the company tribunal. So this is one such case. Perhaps this is a case where Unibev Limited or Global Spirits Limited together are either demerging or there is some sort of scheme or amalgamation at play. That is why they've come up before the tribunal to take their permission to get the scheme sanctioned. Now the last one is an ongoing matter. It says serial number 18, new ND 2015. This is an old matter. This is before the time NCLT came about, and the nomenclature is New Delhi here. It means it must have been perhaps at CLB New Delhi. And it says it has been filed under section 397 and 398. Now, these are the old provisions regarding oppression and mismanagement under the 1956 Act. Under Companies Act 2013, the equivalent provisions are 241, 242. Now, if you see this cause list itself, there are broadly three kinds of matters here that we've highlighted. A large chunk or the lion's share is your IBC. There is one scheme for approval pending before NCLT. And lastly, there is your oppression mismanagement, which is pending before NCLT principal bench. Now, this is essentially what your NCLT is in a nutshell. Of course, there are various things such as how NCLT determines its jurisdiction and what are the powers of NCLT. For I think all of that we will perhaps require a more detailed session, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Rohan, one question I have.
Yes, please.
In cases of mergers, if suppose, let's say two companies, they want to merge and become one company, do they have to approach NCLT for a merger, or do they just do a merger just on their own? Or any let's assume two companies want to do a merger into one company. And do they have to approach NCLT for a merger, or they can do it on their own, suo motu basis, on their own understanding terms and conditions? Or if any disputes arising out of such mergers, only they have to approach NCLT?
So if I understand your question correctly, you are asking that can two companies essentially decide to merge without approaching the tribunal, right?
Yes.
Why do we need to go to the tribunal?
Yes.
Why can't we handle our affairs privately?
Yes.
So what happens in this case is that at least there is a requirement under the Companies Act that whenever there is some kind of a arrangement between either the members of the company or the company on one hand, or there is an arrangement between the creditors of the company and the company itself. In those cases, we are required to approach the NCLT for their approval. So while the two companies can handle their affairs inter se, but ultimately it has to go and seek the blessing of NCLT just so that they are able to ensure that there is no hanky-panky going on. Public interest is not compromised. There is no shareholder or there is no member which through brute force is being asked to sign the deal.
One more personal question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have filed one case in a consumer forum with
Okay.
regard to non-completion of a building for a home buyer. I'm for a home buyer who has entered
Yeah.
into a rental sale agreement with the builder.
Yeah.
Now builder has filed for insolvency proceedings. I have filed before consumer forum,
Yeah.
and many other home buyers have also went and become parties in the insolvency proceedings. Even bank is also a party. The builder has taken several loans from the bank. In
Yeah.
that scenario, do you advise that I should also go and become a party in the insolvency proceedings in case of any dissolution of the entire company assets?
Yeah.
Uh,
I hear you. I hear you. So I
so
think,
if I
yeah, go
don't
ahead.
get a remedy before consumer forum, because I see many other buyers have also went and become parties before in this insolvency proceedings in a company law tribunal. So I have been approached to file before company law tribunal and withdraw my case before consumer forum.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, Abhilash, just a quick answer. I think you should do that. And the reason for that is the moment the petition gets admitted, I don't know whether it's been admitted or not in your case, all proceedings against that developer by virtue of the moratorium will get stayed, including the consumer matter that you just mentioned.
Yes.
Now, the option that you are left with after that is the moment there is a resolution professional or an interim resolution professional who's been appointed to ask for the claims against the company, that's when you as a financial creditor must submit your claims. Otherwise it becomes a problem and then your claim may get barred from being entertained. So
One
it's
more,
important.
yeah, understood. One more question, Rohan. Like, suppose, let's say the builder has taken loans from the bank, and he
Yes.
has also entered into sale agreement, obtaining uh, several funds for the sale agreement. So who gets the first say? Will the banker who has given loans, will he get the first say, or the purchaser who has entered into sale agreement, will he get a the first take in when the assets are uh, divided for payment of different creditors and the purchasers?
So both categories are financial creditors, Abhilash. Both the bank as well as the home buyers are financial creditors. And essentially, whatever percentage of, let's say, the outstanding amount has to be cleared for a financial creditor like a bank, the same percentage should perhaps be given to the home buyers themselves. It certainly cannot be less. So, to answer it differently, since both the bank and the home buyers are placed on a same pedestal as a financial creditor, it is very, very unlikely that a proposal is given where the bank gets more money and the home buyers get less money. Both of them will have to be put on the same pedestal.
Thank you, Rohan. That was very good answer. Yes, Harish.
Hi, sir. Good evening. I
Hi,
have one
Harish.
doubt, sir.
Yeah.
See, actually, what is the limitation for the appeal and what is the jurisdiction for that NCLT?
Well, that is my second section. So I can I
Oh, is it?
answer
Oh, so
that?
sorry.
Yeah, that
Sorry.
is my entire second section,
Okay.
which is the appeal from NCLT orders.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sir.
So I'll cover it there if you don't mind.
Sure. No issues.
But it's 45 days if you ask me. I'll at least answer your question.
Okay.
Okay, so if there are no further questions, I'll just quickly cover the second aspect of NCLT. But before I do that, actually, you might think that out of these 15 benches, how do I know where I need to file a case? Although it's again taking us into a different direction, but I think this much digression is required. So normally under Companies Act, there is no specific provision at all. And you might find it ironic that there is no provision under the Companies Act which tells you where you should file your case. The only suggestion that you get or an inference are from the notifications of MCA, which say that NCLT will have jurisdiction over that particular state or states in which the company has their registered office. But you will not find this provision under the Companies Act. But that's how the NCLT has divided the jurisdiction, different benches of NCLT has divided the jurisdiction amongst themselves. And that's how they've been operating. For example, if there is an operation mismanagement case that you want to file, you must first see where the registered office of the company is and file the petition in the state over which NCLT has jurisdiction. And the list of the NCLT benches are also available on the website. And if you ever want to do it, if you ever want to go and check it out yourself, you can simply go to nclt.gov.in. Now, this is as far as NCLT is concerned. Now, there are, of course, many decisions of NCLT also come under challenge. And the forum for that, which has been enacted by the, which has been brought in by the central government, is called the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, or the NCLAT. So there is NCLT and there is NCLAT. In NCLAT, the current president is Justice A.I.S. Cheema. He's currently the president. And just recently in NCLAT, we've created another bench. Earlier, there was only one bench, which is the New Delhi Principal Bench for NCLAT. Now we also have a Chennai bench, which is currently being operated from Delhi itself. But for whatever matters are filed in arising from the state of Tamil Nadu, there are 2-3 other states. All those matters will come up before the Chennai bench. Now, what are the different kinds of matters which are covered before NCLAT? So anyone wants to take a guess? What are the different jurisdictions of NCLAT? Or what kind of appeals come to it in a broad measure?
As insolvency came into picture, we can appeal into the higher courts where it is required.
Absolutely, that's right.
If a merger or acquisition is not approved by NCLT, then the appeal can be made at NCLAT.
That's excellent, Prema. That's excellent. So that makes it 2. One is IBC, one is a company. Anything else? I think you guys don't need me. You already have covered 75% of the answer.
Is there any money jurisdiction, like if the money is crossing certain limit and only it has to be filed before NCLT?
No, there is no pecuniary jurisdiction, if that's what you're asking, Abhilash. No pecuniary jurisdiction.
Because in consumer forum, we have
Yes.
if the claim is above 1 crore, then we had to approach state commission above 5 crores.
And then above 10 crores before NCDRC. No, there is no pecuniary jurisdiction, except there is a pecuniary jurisdiction in the case of IBC matters in general, which is 1 crore. It is irrespective of the forum. It is just the pecuniary threshold for filing an IBC matter.
So would any dispute regarding spin-offs come under this?
Any dispute regarding?
Spin-offs.
Yeah. So can you give me an example of a spin-off?
Let's say a company has 3 different kinds of businesses, and it plans to stop associating one particular business with the main company. So it spins off the third business into a separate entity.
So it demerges that into another entity.
Yes, kind of, yes.
Yes. So that will typically come under NCLT itself.
Okay,
If you want to take an approval with the creditors and the members, it will come up before NCLT.
okay, sir.
Okay, so I'll answer this, I think, without taking too much time. So I think, Priya, you had mentioned an appeal from in company matters. I think Harish had mentioned about IBC matters. There is a third category as well, which is appeals from the Competition Commission of India. So there was an amendment in 2017 in the Finance Act, whereby matters from CCI or the Competition Commission in India, all appeals from the decisions of CCI would go before NCLAT. The erstwhile body was called COMPAT, which is Competition Appellate Tribunal. That was dissolved. And all the appeals from CCI now come before NCLAT. So there are three primary jurisdictions which NCLAT has. One is your IBC matters, which is under Section 61. All orders passed by your NCLT or the adjudicating authority, as we call it in IBC matters, they will go before NCLAT. There is also an appeal provision provided against the orders of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, which is IBBI. Those will also go before NCLAT. So that's one bucket of IBC matters. In the bucket of company matters, any order passed by NCLT, any order, whether it's an interim order, whether it's a final order, all those orders will come before NCLAT under Section 120, under Section 421. And I think to answer the question again, the limitation for that is 45 days from the date you received the copy of the order. Much has turned on that language, be that as it may, but essentially it's 45 days as limitation for all company matters, and the appeal has to go to NCLAT. The third is, of course, your competition CCI matters that I've covered. And lastly, just like NCLT, NCLAT also has contempt jurisdiction. So if you sort of misbehave with the bench there, they can punish you for contempt against the own members. Or if you've not followed an order of NCLAT and you want to file contempt proceedings, you can directly approach NCLAT. You don't have to go to High Court. So NCLT and NCLAT both have contempt jurisdictions. And now very quickly, I'll also take you through a cause list, a sample cause list of NCLAT as well. So that we have a...
Just a quick question, Rohan, like from CCI, Competition Commission of India,
Yeah.
what type of appeals come from there to NC? It comes to NCLAT or NCLT?
NCLAT, Abhilash.
NCLAT, okay.
All orders, for example, the first order that CCI normally passes is to order investigation by the DG.
Okay.
So if there is an appeal provided under the Competition Act of 2002, that appeal will lie before NCLAT.
Okay, okay. Because the matters of competition commission is totally different, I will say. Like it is mostly regarding to predator principle or something like that, where companies use the market in their favor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It could either be for abuse of dominance, or it could be for cartelization, and there are some restrictive,
okay,
or it could be for some restrictive agreements which are there. And if all those matters will come before CCI, and if you want to appeal an order of CCI, you have to go before NCLAT.
okay, okay.
So yes, you're right, Abhilash. It's a completely different jurisdiction, but it was done more of an administrative exercise, because at that point of time, there were many tribunals which were operating and they didn't have that much caseload.
Okay.
Two tribunals like NCLAT, which were doing well. So they thought, might as well abolish these extra tribunals, shift their work to someplace else.
Yes, in the last session, Avinash Amarnath, he was speaking about competition law.
Yeah.
He was explaining, but today it was a new thing that we learned from here, that the appeal from CCI is appealable before NCLAT. Yeah, it's good to know.
I think we should take Avinash's or Nerdy's case on this. He should have informed it to you guys.
Yeah, maybe we all three should, you both should come for a joint seminar once again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for everyone's benefit, Avinash is another colleague of ours. He's a brilliant lawyer. He's a competition law expert, and that's why we enjoy taking his trip in front of everyone. And a very
Sure.
dear friend, actually. That's the most important point.
Yeah.
So NCLAT, as you rightly said, Abhilash, also has jurisdiction. And just to give you a brief flavor, what I was really talking about, because it helps once when we see the cause list of what kind of matters are come before NCLAT. Okay, so is this screen visible now?
Yes, sir.
Great. So this is your NCLAT principal bench. As I mentioned, there is New Delhi and there is Chennai. This is presided by the chairman, Justice A.S. Chima. There's also a technical member. Now, they've of course classified the case as per the different stages in where they are at. So first one, of course, is for directions, but let's keep that aside for a moment. Let's look at the case numbers. So if you see here, the numbering is Comp App 80 INS number 540 of 2020. Now this simply means it's a company appeal before the appellate tribunal in an insolvency matter. That's it. So this is an example of an insolvency matter. The second item is called a competition application. The third is also compensation application. Now, just to cover this, I'm sure I think Avinash would have covered this. There is a jurisdiction available under the Competition Act of 2002, whereby one party can claim certain amount as compensation from the other party. If, for example, there is some loss caused because of the anti-competitive practice, you are entitled to claim a compensation because of that. I think that is, and that power is available both to CCI and now NCLAT. Earlier it was COMPAT. So I think that is why this application has come. But essentially, these are competition jurisdiction matters. I'm only just going into one layer more just to explain why they are saying compensation application. But essentially, serial number 2 and 3 are competition matters. Now, number 4 is again your insolvency matter. Number 5, insolvency. Now, this number 6 is an example of a contempt case in an IBC matter. So you'll see here, this is jurisdiction number 4 of NCLAT that we just discussed. This is contempt case in company appeal, appellate tribunal, insolvency. Similarly, you have mostly insolvency, right? Yeah, up till serial number 13. Now, again, you will see that largely these days, NCLT and NCLAT are flooded with IBC matters. Earlier, there used to be other different kinds of matters as well, like operation mismanagement, etc. But if you see the way these cause lists are being prepared, a large chunk of their board or a large chunk of the heavy lifting that NCLT or NCLAT has to do is to look at IBC. So you can perhaps say that today NCLT or NCLAT has become an IBC forum. So this is insofar as the NCLT and NCLAT jurisdictions are concerned, and essentially what is the kind of litigations or cases that come up before NCLT or NCLAT. I think I'll just take 2 more minutes to tell you a bit about the practice area if you ever want to venture into all of this, what it requires and how does it really work. So today we can't really say that I'm going to become an IBC lawyer on my own, or I want to do only company law matters. These kind of matters are usually handled by law firms. And why law firms? It's because the clients for whom law firms are acting or representing, the clients are mostly corporates. And all of this litigation, all the cases that we just refer to in the cause list, they're all corporate entities. So essentially, corporate entities require a law firm, they require a team to represent them, to handle their complex cases, to try and get them some relief. So if you want to really establish your practice in these forums, in this branch of law, then one has to enter into a firm where they are essentially dealing with IBC matters, or they are essentially dealing with company law matters, or maybe both. Nowadays, IBC has ended up creating some separate divisions in other firms, but essentially it's all because of the corporate clientele that the company has, that they do get this kind of work. You might also get these cases from an individual perspective, but those I would say are far and few in between. Large chunk of the matter of these kind of matters are usually dealt with by firms. That's of course my understanding of the market in Delhi and perhaps Bombay. I have some sense of how Bangalore works, and I feel that to a large extent, subject to, of course, correction from Abhilash and all of you, I think this is the same case in Bangalore as well. And I see that the NCLT in Bangalore is also flooded with a lot of cases from companies. So as long as you are in one of those good law firms who's handling, whose clientele a corporate client, you will get the chance to work on these matters. And that's how I think you will build it up. So this is the sweet and the simple target of working on these kind of matters by joining a law firm or maybe creating your own. So I think that's all from my end in terms of what NCLT is, what is NCLAT, what kind of matters are to be done. And I'm happy to take any questions that you all have about these specific areas or anything else.
Rohan, in IBC matters, suppose let's say that if in the assets of the company is not enough to pay the creditors.
Yeah.
Can the creditors go against the personal assets of the directors, CEO of the company? And
Yeah, I'll answer that.
Yeah.
Against the officiating persons like directors and CEO, answer is no, because company has a separate artificial existence, and they are the employees, so-called directors or CEO, are not required to pay for the faults of the company. Having said that, if these employees are like promoters of the company and they're also directors, and let's say they've given some guarantees or personal guarantees to support the company, then to enforce those personal guarantees now with the last decision, they can approach for their personal guarantee before NCLT and IBC. But not by virtue of the fact that they are directors simply.
Rohan, yeah, I got the answer. I think we should also do one more session on IBC matters, insolvency proceedings, next month maybe.
Yeah, that will be helpful.
Yeah, because it requires a deeper understanding how the law firms deal with the companies when in matters of insolvency, mergers and acquisitions. What conditions, terms and conditions both have to look for. Yeah.
Absolutely, you're right.
So I think it will be a wonderful experience to know about the stuff what happens inside for our students. Yeah.
Sir, I have a question.
I think for everyone's benefit, I don't look that old. I am not that old. So please address me by my name.
Okay.
Small request. That's all.
Okay, I will try not to name names, but I'll just put my question out front. Previously, Abhilash sir had mentioned about a case where he has filed something in the consumer court,
Yes.
but you said that in a situation where this case has gone to the tribunal, then the consumer court case would be stayed, correct? So if there are any criminal or civil proceedings against a company or servants of the company, would those also get stayed?
So, yes, I'll answer that. So, firstly, for the stay to take place or the moratorium to take place, which is the term given under Section 14 of IBC, the petition has to be admitted. Without admission, moratorium does not come in. As the second part of your question is what happens in civil cases or criminal cases, where especially the officers or servants of the company are personally involved. I think perhaps that was the second part of your question. So for criminal proceedings, there is no moratorium, there is no stay. So if there is a investigation happening against the officer of the company for something is done, or there is an enforcement directed investigation, then those will not be stayed. So there are decisions on that point. The idea of a stay is only from the perspective of preserving the assets of the company. What the IBC contemplates and envisages is that, look, if I'm going to resolve your problem of your debts and make your books debt free and bring you, give you a new lease of life and help you stand on your feet, this will take some time. So during this time, I don't want cases and proceedings to be filed against you, which ends up reducing your asset base. Because then if everyone manages to take away money from the company, just like, for example, in the example Abhilash gave, his client wants money in a consumer matter. And if, like Abhilash's client, any other client starts asking for money, there'll be nothing left. So the moratorium is there to ensure that till the time there a resolution is not done, all proceedings against the company, which has an effect on the assets of the company per se, those will get stayed. Criminal proceedings or quasi-criminal proceedings, or let's say Section 138 check bouncing cases as well against the directors at their own personal liabilities, those will not come in the way.
Okay, I just want to add to this. The idea behind the question was, let's say a company has engaged in forgery, or they have acquired some asset by coercion or threat of force. Okay, and that asset is now part of the company, which is at the tribunal, or they have filed a petition, whatever. And in this case, what would be the reaction, or what is the right way to approach a situation like this, where, and in one side they're trying to prove that there has been some misconduct on the side of the company to acquire an asset, and on the other hand there is this insolvency issue. So here, if we look at forgery and acquiring some property by force, those would be criminal charges. However, the asset is still tied to the company, which is under liquidation or insolvency plea. So how would a person who's trying to get justice approach this matter?
So if I understand your question, and that's actually a very good question. Your question is, if for some reason the company has forged certain documents and through that mechanism it has acquired an asset, then what does that poor guy do whose asset has been taken? Because on one hand, Rohan, you were telling me there is going to be moratorium and you can't do anything about it.
Yes.
So in that case, there is of course a possibility of that person filing a criminal case saying that it's forgery, it's a forged document. The title under that does not pass on to the company. So criminal proceedings can be used to get this deal quashed in law. It would be a different matter if it's not forgery and let's say it's a plain civil dispute. Let's complicate it further, Priya.
Okay.
If the situation is, yes, it's been signed properly, but the company didn't pay its share.
Rohan, I'll just share one of my experience handling one of my clients.
Yeah.
Wherein the main two directors who are in charge for signing the checks, they frauded another another company, Boruka Gas Private Limited, for
Yeah.
up to 1 crore.
Yeah.
And the court held liable all the other directors. In this
Yeah.
case, I got bail for the directors in this check bounce matter
Yeah.
before magistrate court in Bangalore, stating the reason that my directors were not involved in signing the check. They did not have
Right.
authority to sign the check. Based on this ground, the bail was granted, and High Court removed them from the case also in further.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's important, like, who signs the check.
Yeah, your basic provisions, I think, Abhilash, those section 140, 141, 142, the responsible director.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's possible.
Yes.
And just to tie it into Priya's question, so in those cases, you can individually target these people. But if it's a plain civil dispute, as I was mentioning, where the company has, let's say, not paid the entire consideration and still acquired the property.
Mhm.
So in those cases, chances are perhaps that the moratorium will not come into play, because our idea will be to challenge it to say that this was never the asset of the corporate debtor, or so therefore section 14 will not come into play, or even if it is, then I'm going to file for my remaining claim under the IBC.
Okay. But I'm fairly certain these things happen, right? They try to acquire a property and they get it signed in your names, but like you said, the consideration might not have been paid in full. But
Yeah.
at the time of claiming such consideration, which is duly owed, the company claims bankruptcy and tries to wash their hands off this payment. So
Yeah.
this is the reason why I asked the question.
No, I completely understand from where you're coming from. So it depends on the facts of that peculiar case, what kind of remedy will be available. But from the top of my, from off the cuff, I believe certainly one can argue that this moratorium business will not come into the play, because it only comes into place for an asset which is owned by the company. And if I can show from the agreement, underlying agreement, that the transfer property has still not taken place, then perhaps that litigation should continue. So,
And where can we file such contests on stay or moratorium?
moratorium is ordered by NCLT. So, if you want to challenge that, you will have to file an appeal before NCLAT.
Okay. Okay.
But
Thank
what usually happens is, just to give you a complete answer, while you may not be able to challenge NCLT's order for moratorium, because moratorium will otherwise apply to the other cases also, if there are other cases against the company. But what you can say, perhaps in your specific case, this moratorium does not apply and your proceedings should continue. For that to happen, there are 2-3 remedies. Yes, you can go and appeal before NCLAT, number one. Number two, there is a residual provision under IBC called Section 60, subclause 5, that provides you with the benefit of filing an application for any matters concerning insolvency. So you can approach NCLT under that. And if you feel for some reason that is not an efficacious remedy, then perhaps a writ before a high court. So you'll have to see on a case-to-case basis. But these are 3 broad avenues available.
Understood. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Any last questions? Okay, I hope everybody were able to grasp the jurisdiction and aspects of company law. So,
Yes, sir. This was very new to me. So I have a lot of things to take away from the seminar. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you, Priya. I hope it was helpful to everyone.
yeah, it was another informative seminar, Rohan. Yes, Harish, you had a question.
Yes, sir. Actually, it was my question was, can further appeal be happen from NCLT to Supreme Court for any other unsatisfied litigations, maybe an IBC case or contempt cases?
Absolutely, absolutely. So from both IBC and Companies Act, if you're not satisfied with NCLAT's decision, you can go to Supreme Court.
What are the limitations, sir?
Yes. From IBC, it's section 62, and from Companies Act, it's, I think, section 423
Limitations,
to
sir?
Supreme Court. To Supreme Court.
Limitation.
Limitation is 45 days. In
Okay,
case
both.
of, in case of companies, and I think IBC, it's perhaps 60 days. I mean, I have to jog my memory on this. But I think, I believe it's 60 days. I'll quickly check and confirm it to you also.
Many a times we flout this rule of 60 days and we file affidavits stating some other hospitalization
Yes, sir.
reasons, and we just extend the time limit.
Yeah, so in NCLT now, what's happening is, Abhilaj, you raised an interesting facet. So under this limitation section of 421, it is very clear that you will get 45 days to appeal, and for condonation of delay, you get another 45 days, but no more beyond that. So if you cross 90 days, you're out. It's permanently time barred now. So that's the new scheme, and I think the tribunal has started enforcing that provision. There are a couple of decisions as
Then
well.
the person should file an affidavit that he was in coma for several days.
I haven't found a client like that, but we'll be testing the law on that. Yeah, sure, we can do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Sir, but why would anybody want to stretch this out for so long? If there is a reason to contest the judgment from the tribunal, and if they're so sure that they want to take it to Supreme Court for another hearing, why would they delay it for so long?
Yeah, that's a valid question. And that is also the presumption of the legislature. That is why they give you this much period. And the extension of the soft cushion is only when there are extreme circumstances that you were not able to decide, or for whatever reason. But there are sometimes some strategic reasons, which of course I cannot discuss in a public forum like this, which maybe requires you to stretch things. And you will, as a lawyer, they'll come to you for all kinds of problems. And those cases, you will feel that, if I file it, there is a risk. If I don't file it, I will lose this. So I need more time. Yes, there has to be an ultimate decision on this. That is why the cutoff. You can stretch it to the last day, but beyond that, it's a problem. The strategy will fail.
Okay, I think this is clear. Thank you.
And
Rohan,
also, sometimes it happens, just to give you another situation, where you end up changing a lawyer. And this is perhaps the most cumbersome thing that a client has to go through, changing a lawyer, getting the files from the old lawyer, giving it to the new lawyer, getting acquainted with the facts. So those things might also take some time. So that's why they have a time period, a reasonable time period within which the appeal can be filed. So it may not be strategic reasons all the time. It could be a genuine reason why so much time has taken.
So there's no condition against the advocate who is part of the hearing in the NCLT or NCLAT. They don't need to be AOR, right? They can just be an advocate.
Yeah. Advocate is fine. Just fine.
one peculiar experience, Rohan, I want to share. I had filed one case before Consumer Forum. The court awarded in my client's favor because the travel agency frauded my client for around 2.5 lakhs. He registered himself as a company, Global Inc. Private Limited. But when the warrant was issued, when the police went to their doors, he told that I am not this company. I am Global National Private Limited, but he's the same director who is handling the company. So now I'm filing a new affidavit from my client that the director of this company is the same person, but he has started the new company and has closed the old company. It's just a clever tactics used by the opposite party to prevent arrest.
Yeah, possible. You're right. So the corporate veil should be lifted and should be pierced to get to this person.
Okay. we come to an end. We thank you, Rohan, for a wonderful, informative seminar. It was way too helpful for all our students. And we look forward for your next session on insolvency in bank proceedings. Maybe next
Yeah.
month. We'll definitely meet again. And any
Yeah,
few,
and
yeah,
yeah, go ahead, Abhilash. Sorry.
any few comments from any of our students?
The session was wonderful, sir. We got a lot of information about NCLT and NCLAT. And this topic, as it was new, it was not new actually, but about deep, we got more information about the NCLT and NCLAT actually, which was very helpful for us future, sir. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
Yes, Bindu.
Hi, Rohan. Hi, Abhilash. Really great session. Though I was not able to contribute, I joined midway. A couple of things. I wish you could also take some session on corporate law, especially for beginners like us, who in 2 years may be entering the field. So it would be a great help.
The ocean to deal with corporate law.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely. But I'll try my best, Bindu, to cover that. Maybe in the next session or something like that.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Rohan. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all students.
Thank you,
We'll
sir.
see Rohan again next month. Thank you, Rohan, once again. Yeah, let's sign
Thank
off.
you. Thank you,
Stay
everyone.
safe.
Yeah.
Very much.
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you.
See you. Bye-bye.